Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Well, last time we worked on the brake lines going both to the front and the back of the car. This week, we're going to be working on, well, we're going to be working kind of backwards. We're going to actually be working on coilovers that are already in the car. All right, so why are we working backwards? Well, for two reasons. We're working backwards at the front of the car because we actually have to pull the upper control arms away from the chassis so we can get the last two rivets that need to go in for our F panels. Now, we could probably leave those rivets out and it probably wouldn't hurt anything because it's actually just holding the front portion of the mid part of the F panel on, and we've already got sealant in there. We used spring clips as we were putting together, so we know the sealant or the silicone had a pretty good bond as it was all going together. They probably wouldn't come apart, but since we're going to be pulling the coilovers out anyway, it just seemed reasonable that we'll pull the two bolts out for the upper control arms. We'll get those last two rivets in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to be replacing the springs on all four corners of this car because we want to change out both the spring rate and the spring manufacturer. I'm not a fan of replacing perfectly good parts supplied by Factory 5. But in this case, we were going to be pulling the coilovers off anyway. And so when asked, the car owner asked me if we should address the spring rates. And for the type of driving that he's going to be doing, I thought it would be best to select a spring that was more geared towards a street performance car versus a like track use car. We want something that's going to have a comfortable ride, but yet we want something that's going to be able to carve corners if taken on a mountain road. What we're doing is we're compromising. We're getting the most compliant ride with the most amount of performance that we can get from that type of setup. So basically in the front of the car, we're going to be changing out the 500-pound Factory 5 supplied coilover springs for a set of Eibach 425-pound springs. And like I said, if we weren't going to be pulling all this apart anyway, we probably wouldn't have changed the springs. But since it all had to come apart, we just decided it was time to do it now rather than waiting until, the owner had put some miles on it and then found out that the ride wasn't compliant enough for him. So here's the reason that we're pulling out these coilovers. These are Koni Reds, and they are single adjustable coilover shocks. That's right. I'm going to repeat it again. Single adjustable. Now, anybody looking at these shocks from the outside are going to say to themselves, those aren't adjustable. There's no knobs on them. Well, there is actually a button. And that button is underneath a black cap at the base of the shaft for the coilover. And if you go to Koni's website, which I'm going to actually provide the link in the description box of this video, they have instructions on how to set the rebound for 4 settings. 4. From full soft to full firm. We're pulling these off because we don't know where they were set. Now typically, from Koni, these will be set the second to hard position. So it'll be in the third click. Third click. But not always. I've pulled them out of the box and sometimes they've been on the first click and they've been on the second click. And so our biggest fear is that they're not uniform. They're not all the same. Now, we may pull these off and they may all be the same. But since we're changing the spring rates as well, we're going to be able to tailor the ride of the car based on what the actual car owner is looking for. So he and I are going to be having a discussion in the next couple of days to find out exactly how he's going to be using this car. And then we're going to make a decision, both of us, on what we think is going to be the best setting. Now, this car has sway bars, both front and rear. A front sway bar on one of these cars with a solid axle and no rear sway bar is a pretty bad idea, because these cars are tail happy to begin with. You're almost better off with one of these to have a rear sway bar and no front sway bar. However, with both, we hope we're going to be able to counteract any ill effects that the front sway bar may inject into the performance of this car. Now, Slytherin has sway bars both front and rear. Now, the front sway bar on Slytherin is much smaller than the one on this car. I believe this is a 7/8 inch sway bar as supplied by Factory 5. The one on Slytherin is a 3/4 inch bar from a 90s Mazda Miata. And in the back of Slytherin, I have a Gordon Levy or Levy Racing 5-link rear end that I can adjust, and I can actually give the car or set the car up so that it approximates a sway bar in the rear. And I've been very happy with mine. I don't change the settings on the back of the car all too often, but there are far more adjustments on the rear end of Slytherin than I'll probably ever use. So, that said, I'm going to get to work. I'm going to start pulling apart the front of this car, and I'm hoping by the time I'm ready to wrap this video up that I will have the springs for the rear of the car. Right now, they're about a week out from when we ordered them, and we just received the springs for the front. So let me walk over. I'll show you the springs that we got. And I've been getting messages from the car owner saying, boy, those are red. But they actually match the they actually match the Koni coilovers pretty well in their color. We did the same exact springs on Michael's Mk4. So here are the springs, or one of the springs anyway. Let me see if I can turn that over. And this is what we went for. So it's an 8-inch spring. It is 2.5 inches in diameter. And the spring rating is 425 pounds per inch. We use the same setting on Slytherin, and we use the same setting of springs on Michael's Mk4. Now, we've also done a number of other cars with that same spring rate. We didn't have the YouTube channel at the time. But if you're interested in any of those cars that we did with these springs and the spring rates, just go back and look on our Facebook page, because I've documented every one of the cars that we've done with these particular springs. And all of the owners, including myself, have been really happy with the compliance of the ride on the highway. And if you've ever been on some of the roads, I know in California anyways, I can attest to this, where the big trucks travel, you'll notice that a 90-inch wheelbase car catches those we call them it's like buckboard, you know, where the car starts to oscillate like this, or porpoise, sometimes they call it. That combination of springs on a solid axle Mk4 or Mk3 really help to smooth out that ride on highways. It's compliant enough that it'll absorb some of that, so the suspension is actually doing what it's supposed to, but it's not so soft that the car bottoms out. And so the way we counteract that in cornering is, of course, we add sway bars. And the sway bars will help with the body roll, so you're not going to get as much body roll in the car that you would normally make up for in spring rate. So that's what I'm going to be working on. I'm going to start pulling apart the front end of the car, and I'll bring you guys back as soon as I get the coilovers off, the springs out, and I'm ready to set up the front coilovers for their rebound setting. All right, everybody, welcome to tomorrow. Started with the front end tonight. I got the coilovers all set, so we ended up setting the rebound on the coilovers to full soft. And I'm still waiting on the rear springs, which were supposed to ship today. So I'm hoping I'll have those in the next couple of days, and I'm going to actually show you step by step how to adjust the rebound on at least one of the rear shocks before I put the coilover back together. But I did complete the fronts today, and I wanted to give you a quick kind of down and dirty way to set up your front suspension, because if you follow the Factory 5 instruction manual, it is a bit confusing because the upper control arms are not mirror images of one another, meaning there's not a right and a left. They're both, either one of them could be a right or a left. And so the measurements they give you are set up for a front and rear dimension, but as the case was with this car, the owner set them up according to the way they're laid out in the instruction manual. And so one had negative camber, the other one had positive camber. And so you want to make sure you catch that, and then always set your larger dimension for the initial setup for the upper control arm. Make that the front. The larger dimension goes on the front, the smaller dimension goes on the back. And that doesn't matter whether it's power steering or manual steering. This is just to get you kind of on the ground so you can roll the thing around and not have the thing just fighting itself as you're trying to push the car around the shop. So here you go. I got the coilover all in place. Kudos to the car owner, because he actually installed some grease on the Delrin washer that was mounted here on the bottom collar of the coilover. A lot of people miss that. You do need to put some type of lubricant on there. You can use white lithium grease. You can use, high temperature disc wheel brake, disc brake wheel bearing grease. You can use any kind of grease on here. It doesn't matter. What one of my buddies always said, the best grease is whatever's in the grease gun. So just a little will go a long way. You just want to make these things easy to adjust later if you need to bring the car up or bring the car down or set your corner weights. So just a little bit on there will do just fine. I put them together. I've got the bottom bolts all cinched in place. I think you can see them down here. No, you can't. But the top bolt, what I want to let you guys know, and I'm going to show you an example because the back ones are still done this way. You want to have the bolt come through the nylon lock nut enough that it actually engages the nylon of the lock nut. If it's just flush here with the end, you're never going to get the nylon to do what it's supposed to do, and that is to lock the nut in place. I removed both the front and the rear washer because with the washers in place, the nylon on the lock nut was doing absolutely nothing. Now, the owner did, you can see on all the suspension stuff that he did, he put witness marks on them. So he put witness marks on the control arms. He put witness marks on the upper control arms. When he put those in, they've changed since we've retorqued these. So he did everything by the book. I'm not faulting him for any of this. And the instruction manual tells you to put washers on each side. But the bolt's going into steel. It's going into flat steel. So you don't need a washer there. And you don't need a washer there to spread the load out. Okay? The flange is already big enough that it's already spreading the load out. The washers are there to do nothing but take up space. And in this case, they're actually taking up so much space, they're not allowing the lock nut to do its job. I'll show you here in the back because I've left them because I haven't pulled them apart yet. So here, look at the back right here, okay? The nut isn't even engaging. The nylon portion of the nut isn't even engaging because it's still on the tapered portion of the bolt. This is wrong. And like I said, this isn't the car owner's fault. He did it according to the assembly manual. But I'm going to remove these washers when I put it back together so that we get full engagement of the nylon lock nut and it's going to do its job. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in for the night. I did get both sides of the car done on the front, but I'm going to bring you guys back for this as soon as I get those coilover springs, which probably will be tomorrow. If they ship today, I should have them tomorrow because they ship from one of two places. They either ship from Summit Racing, which is in Sparks, Nevada. It could come from Texas, which could take a couple of days. But normally, stuff to California ships from Sparks, Nevada, and it's one day. or they ship directly from Eibach, drop shipped, in which case Eibach is in Corona. They're only about 35 miles from us. And so if they went in the mail today, they should be here tomorrow. So we'll see. Regardless, I'll catch up with you guys just as soon as I get those springs. And I'll show you exactly how to set the rebound on these Koni Red coilover shocks. All right, everybody. It's many tomorrows from where we left off. But I did get the springs this morning. So I can't believe we're still dealing with supply chain issues. We originally ordered these from Summit Racing, and Summit showed them in stock when I sent the link to the car owner, and by the time he ordered them, they were back ordered. And so they gave us an updated shipping, and that was the last time that I picked up the camera and I told you they should ship that day and I should have them the next day. Well, that following morning we got another delay in shipping, said that they were not going to ship out until like February 8th or something like that. And today is the 30th, just so if that matters at all to any of you. So we started looking for other places to order them from, and so we just simply went on to Amazon and found a Amazon supplier that had two in stock. We got a relatively good price on them, actually better than what we got from Summit Racing, and they arrived this morning. So that took 3-4 days to ship. So it's probably a week later, something like that. But we got them. So what I'm going to do right now, I've been working on some other things on the car. You'll see that in later videos you'll see me struggling with that. But I got the coil springs, and so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to raise the car up on the lift. I'm going to pull the rear wheels off, and then I'm going to attack the coilovers one at a time. And one of those, I will show you exactly how to set the rebound on the coilover shock. Now, something I noticed when I was under the car here about a week and a half ago is that the rear coilovers are mounted upside down on this car. So basically this should be the bottom so that this spring isn't bound up against the back of what's called the traction lock bracket here. Our spring is bound up right on the back of that bracket right now. And so we're going to pull these out. We're going to flip them over the other way so that we get a little bit more clearance on the bottom, and we're able to get those in the way they're supposed to be. It was just an oversight. I think the owner saw that the front ones went in that orientation and probably just figured they both went in that way. Just for the record, the red Konis, it doesn't matter. There is no right side up or right side down. It can go in either way. You can back that up with a simple call to someone who knows what they're talking about at Factory 5. My suggestion is always to talk to Dan there, because Dan knows these cars pretty well. He's worked at Factory 5 a long time. But the Koni Reds can be mounted either way, body up or body down, and it doesn't matter. The silver, the dual adjustable Konis that they put on the hot rods and some of the other cars, they can only go in the car one specific way, and that's it. So you want to make sure that you orient them properly, but the Koni Reds don't matter. So I'm going to get the back end pulled apart. I'll show you guys exactly how to set the rebound on the red Koni coilover shock. All right, so what I'm going to start with is I'm going to pull the snap ring out. You guys have probably gone through this already because you had to put the shocks together the first time. And then you want to take all the pressure off of the spring, and honestly you can't get it apart without taking the spring pressure off anyway. So bring the spring collar down to a point where the top collar has enough room to get out of there. And in this case we're going to have to move the bump stop down too. So I'm going to grab a screwdriver and I'm going to move that bump stop down. The bump stop is this right here, this foam rubber piece. So I'm just going to get a screwdriver in here. I'm going to lower it down, and I'm going to push it down out of the way. The collar will come out, and the spring will come off. Now the bump stop can go back where it was. And then right down here, you're going to look for a notch. This notch right here. You're going to get the screwdriver in there, and you're just going to maneuver this thing off. And it is going to get out of your way. And then see this button? That button is what we're going to use to adjust the shock. So right now, you'll see this thing will just spin around. But I'm going to push the button in, and then you'll feel the collar will lock right there. So we'll see if we're at full soft or we're at full hard, or we're somewhere in between. We know it's locked to the left, which is counterclockwise. We're going to move it to the right, and I'll feel 1 click, 2 clicks, 4 clicks. So all the way to the right is full hard, and we're going to take it back. So we're just confirming that this one was at full soft, shipped. Now this is the third one we've done, and the first two were different. I think the first one I did was at full soft. The second one was 1 click in from full soft, and then this one was at full soft as well. So that's done. We know it's at full soft. We'll align the piece back up here so it snaps in. And now we're going to grab the new spring and we're going to put it in. So here's one of our new springs. I'm kind of OCD with this, so I'm going to make sure that the riding is face up as the shock body is put in the car. That's going to be this way. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to move the bump stop down. I'm going to put the collar in place, and then I'm just going to start slowly bringing the adjustment collar up until it gets to the bottom of the spring hat. Okay, we're just going to go snug. Now this is a good starting point for your initial ride height. Just snug this up to the bottom of the spring and you should be able to get your ride height set pretty well. Now I always like to make sure that I do the crown of the snap ring so the edge of it is facing down. And then I always try to offset the snap ring away from the opening in the top hat. So that one's done. We'll get the other one done and then we'll start putting them in the car. Nirvana. Smells like Teen Spirit. I looked at the assembly manual, imagine that, and I'll be damned. It shows the Koni coilovers, the reds, the other way, the way the car owner had them. Now, I don't think they fit better that way. So I'm going to put them in the way I usually put them in. I don't know if something's changed, but I have always put these in with the body down. It's easier to adjust the springs too from underneath. So when I corner weight the car, I don't have to pull the wheels off. I can do all my adjustments right at the bottom of the collar. So that's the way I'm going to put them in. I don't know. I think I'm gonna go back to my original Koni installation and see if they're the same way in there. But I specifically remember people reporting that they had issues with the coilovers, the springs, hitting part of the 3-link assembly. Now I don't have a 3-link in Slytherin. I have a it's a 3-link, but it has a Watts link, so it's considered a 5-link. And so a lot of those 3-link instructions don't apply to me because the brackets, I don't have a bracket on the passenger side for a panhard bar. So I don't have as much interference on that side. So mount them the way you want, but we had interference with the springs hitting the back of the traction lock brackets on this car when I pulled these off. So inverting the coilovers the other way gave us all the room in the world. So I'm going to finish putting this one on. I've got it all put together here. So you can see it right here. I've got the hardware waiting to put everything on. And now, when I pulled off the top bolt, and I'm not throwing the the owner under the bus here, I noticed that there was some thread locking compound on the nut, and I thought, oh well, he saw that there was going to be a problem with the nylon not engaging the bolt, and so he put some thread sealant on in order to, not thread sealant, thread locker on there to keep the nut from backing off. But I also found it on this one here. So all that residue that you see on there is thread locker. Don't do that, guys. Thread locker and nylon lock nuts do not play nice together. The thread locker will eat the nylon away. So I'm going to have to change at least the bottom bolt on both sides. I already changed the one on the passenger side when I put it together, but I'm going to change the one over here too, because that thread locker has contaminated the nylon, and so it will not lock properly now. You generally shouldn't reuse nylon locking hardware because it can be suspect. These haven't been on that long, and so like on the front coilovers where we knew that the nylon hadn't engaged, and in the back here where we know that it hadn't engaged, I reused them. But on both of these bottom ones, I probably would have reused them, but since they've got contamination from the thread locker, I'm not going to reuse them. So let me get this side all put back together, and before I put the wheel on, I'll give you an idea of what it looks like. All right, so just so you know, this is the assembly manual, and it does show the passenger side rear with the shock body mounted up. And again, I don't know why, it has more clearance with the body facing down. So that's the way we're going to install it. All right, so here is the coilover installed and done. So you can see we've got it mounted, the body down. So this is the body of the shock, and this is on the bottom side. And you can see in here how much clearance we have to that to the back of the axle right now, and even down below where the traction lock bracket is. So the traction lock bracket is this right down here. And when you have the shock inverted the other way, this coil spring near the top here, when it's turned the other way, it gets awfully close to this, and the spring is nestled right against that traction lock bracket. So that's why we like to mount them the way we have them mounted here in the car. So with this side all done, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put the wheels on. All right, so quick look. Front's all finished with the brand new coil springs on the coilovers there. The rear is all done. Those are looking good. Go around to the other side. All done in there. And all done on the front passenger side. So I think that's going to wrap things up for this time. As always, if you guys are enjoying the content here, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.